And I do apologize. It looks like I may have had my mic off here on the webinar, so I do apologize. Let me go on and get back in and refer here to the, to me, I believe is the story of the day. We're seeing that the euro coming up, but let's go back into the main screen. It looked like I had my main mic off. So we're seeing this run up in bunds, and I was mentioning earlier that we were just down here, and this during the European crossover, it looked like we might kind of put a pause in here and start to slide in here. But there's this story out saying that the ECB is going to use the prime for a big bazooka in September. What I was stating is, shoot, the euro could be even lower, and we'll go in and move back into that. I did mention about gold. Gold's kind of holding steady here. We're not making new highs despite the bunds moving to new lows as far as rates. 10-year yields are still low. They're not making new all-time lows, unlike the bunds, and 30-year yield rates have gone to new all-time lows. Getting back to the main screen, what I was referring to was, I said, one of the things that I do believe I think is going to go and happen is I think we will get a surprise intra-meeting cut. I think somebody else mentioned it, but it's actually Dale's guest from the previous Friday. That was the one that had talked about it. I think Dale had mentioned it with that guest coming up from way at the beginning of last week. And I said, you know what, that makes a whole lot of sense to me. And I think that could take place within the next 2 to 3 weeks, especially with the way, the inversion we're seeing, new all-time lows and 30-year yields here in the U.S., and suggesting that a recession is definitely on the horizon. And if we do get that surprise rate cut, I do believe we will get it. I think that it won't be for 25 basis points. I think it's going to be for 50 basis points. And considering how things are right now, that would be within reason, that 50 basis points. So I think we will get a 50 basis point surprise cut intermeeting. And I think it'll take place before the ECB has a chance to make action. And as I was mentioning back in, I think they had it in 96, if I believe correctly, when they had a surprise rate cut. Now there was one, I think Raul Paul mentioned one in 2001, but if I remember correctly, I think it was in 1996 that there was a surprise rate cut, and the market rallied. I think at the time it was like 65 handles or something like that. Well, that sounds like nothing compared to where we are now. But if you extrapolate that to where we were back then to where we are now, that seems like that'd be like 150, 140 pip tick rally, handle rally in the S&P. So I think that that's a stark possibility with the surprise rate cutting. And I think it could take place within 2 to 3 weeks before the ECB meeting. And I think that would be on the horizon. I think that the euro, it could be even far worse considering where the bunds are. But we have come here. I mentioned earlier when the mic was off, we had 1135 as our bias chart support. That was actually our stretch support yesterday. And you can see that held. And then when we came in with the US data, we also held there, but we only rallied up about to maybe 1147, and then we rolled over. Obviously, that news has really sent the bunds higher and accordingly also sent the euro lower. We have seen a nice little pop up here in the cable, just completely, very, very oversold. We finally were able to get above this bias chart resistance that we've had in place, and you can see that's kept the market in check for the last few days. The 2094, we got past that, had very, very nice zoom up in here. But dollar yen itself is very, very quiet. Peso has pared back a little bit from that 1970. I believe we had 1968 as our bias chart resistance, but we're still pretty close there. Not a whole lot of changes. As I said, the big story of the day is with the euro, with that dip, and the ECB supposedly having a big bazooka for September. I think if you look at the euro, and we'll look at it on a daily. We talked about this a lot of, we had 1228 as our bias chart resistance. We actually had on one day 1211, and we were mentioning in the chat room, hey, look, it's kind of a hard time getting past 1228 because at the time that was the whole, the Hong Kong thing was really starting to garner some traction here. I think that might have been on Monday. And that did keep the market in check. And so we kind of moved back and forth between the mid 1190s there. And I said, hey, look, if we fold this over, that's going to fold over that range. That's going to take us to 1150, maybe a little bit of an overshoot to 1145-ish. And we saw that move lower. And yesterday we had our stretch support at 1135. We saw a bounce from that area. But I think that if you look at this now, I think this is about, a lot of people had thought we were going to break higher. And it certainly did look like it was going to break higher. Here in the euro, a lot of people talking about that, you know, hey, look, if they unwind some of these trades, we can really start to take off. And that is all true. But I think that they're playing for that. When we broke here, I think we took some people out. But I think on this whole thing with the ECB, I think that broke the back of a lot of people that were long. I myself, I've got a long right now with the euro, but I'm saying is for the people that were in this range, okay, in this range, I think it broke the back. So what's going to happen is the market now needs to reprice itself in this area. I think that the market, in turn, things calm down. We can rally back probably to about the 1170-ish area right there in time, but we have to get past today's events. Obviously, the whole Boons making new all-time lows again is certainly going to weigh on that. But I think what's happened is the people that were here, there might have been some people with some deeper pockets that said, look, I don't care. I'm telling you the euro is going to go higher. It makes no difference. And so they probably kept the longs. And this morning, they probably got knocked out of the box past this 1128. That's what I think has happened, 1128. So now those people are gone, I would think, for the most part. So the market may kind of, you know, pick itself up, may kind of bop around, all things being equal, like I said. I think that potentially we could make it up to 1170 in time before we pare back. But we have more work to do here. We can actually come down here to this 1079, but we're pretty well overstretched. The Boons might even pare back in over the next few days. We shall see. And that probably allow a challenge of the 1145-ish and then pull back. And then another challenge, which may eventually run into 1170. Once again, all things being equal. But obviously, if we do get at that surprise rate cut, which I do believe we will get within the next 2 to 3 weeks, that will flip things around. Obviously, weaken the dollar. Things are pretty much in check. And don't forget, we're in August, slow period. A lot of European traders are on holiday for the last 3 weeks of the month. We'll take a quick, brief look at the cross rates. But obviously, the euro is the big story of the day, and the whole ECB story. Let's just quickly go into the cross rates before we wrap up. Euro New Zealand, obviously, with the weakness in the euro, Euro New Zealand coming into some very key support here at the 72.11. Right here, we have seen the guppy just move up just a little bit right into bias chart resistance. That's where we have these pink lines. I usually put them in the pink lines because that makes it easier for them to stand out. If I'm looking across and say, whoa, wait a minute, cable's pretty strong. Let me look across the board and I can look at where it stands against, starting against the odd or starting against the yen. So they stand out for me, and that's why I like to use those as generally as a bias chart resistance or support. Aussie yen, dead as a freaking doornail, and you can see the euro yen has really come back down here. I think Blake talked about, and euro, wow, look at that, coming into some very key support right here. I think that is our bias chart support, but that's a very key level here, 63, looking at it right here. See that? I think we had it as a 63.58, but that's pretty good key level for them to come back into. So we'll see if euro can go on. It may hold its own. Getting back in here to the main screen. We saw a big pop up here in the euro, but then it quickly faded back. Like I said, these moves have been a little bit frustrating. I thought that we could have made a move up into above 7. The 709 level and 719 was at 50%. And I even mentioned, I think it was yesterday, hey, look, at least if this thing would have made a move up into the, you know, above here into the 680s. Now we did get a blip, but it didn't, I don't think it even quite made it to 80. I think it made it to what, 77. So I wouldn't even have a limit there anyways, and I was asleep at the time, but you can see how quickly it gave back. So this yen is really keeping its bid up in here. But other than that, the euro is a big story. I did mention also today, though, 33.30 is basically a pivot and bias chart resistance right here. The dollar cat has had a pretty good run up in here. I'm a bit surprised here that we haven't been able to muster that much of a gain, but that much of a gain it certainly has. But I think it'll have a tough time. This is our bias chart resistance. as well as, I believe, a pivot in the sense that if we can get a foothold, a 2-hour close above this, that would certainly move us up higher. But I'm not sure that will necessarily happen. But that's all we got here. Obviously, the big story is the Bunds on the backdrop of the ECB story, supposedly by an official that they've got a big bazooka waiting. So we shall see. Thanks for joining us here on the Daily Roundup. And as I always mentioned, I'll consider a trial of the ForexAnalytix. Excellent platform with the immediate news marker, the spot marker for immediate news. You can see it as the headline pops up across, as well as I mentioned, the different analysis types, whether it be basic, technical, macro, harmonics, Elliott wave. But as I always say, to me, the strength's in the chat room with the very traders with different styles and approaches and lengths of time, and very supportive. Everybody very willing to share their information. To me, I think that's the strength of ForexAnalytix. But take it for a spin for $1 for a 10-day trial. And thanks for joining us here on the Daily Wrap Up.